Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
Why are you so inconsiderate? I was very clear. The balloons should be a delicate lilac color with pearlescent glitter. What did you put up here? It looks terrible. Susana Santos angrily pointed at the huge heart-shaped balloons, which the poor designer and his assistants were placing under the ceiling of the fancy restaurant Gran Leroux. Mom, please calm down. There is still time. There's no need to put so much pressure on people. Sofía Santos' daughter tried to talk sense into the woman. The girl patted her mother on the shoulder, but her mother only splashed her hands, looking at her daughter. Sofía, your wedding is only 3 weeks away. We have to buy you a dress, approve the menu and decorate the place in only 3 weeks. And I'm not even mentioning tons of other things we have to do. I don't understand how you can be so calm. Our reputation in the media for the next year depends on this event. Susana glanced angrily at the waiters fussing around the room. I said you should put the tables in groups. Make it feel like a home social club. No, this is unbearable. Okay, Susana, we'll fix it, the nervous waitress said, turning red from nerves and the endless running back and forth. We just need to tell Carlos Ferrer. Your manager could have found time for a meeting with us, Susana Santos said irritably. Why does he always stay in his office? Maybe he's afraid of interacting with VIP clients? The girl in the white blouse only shrugged her shoulders. She had no idea what that unpleasant man was doing in his office. She was even glad her boss wasn't here, because he always tried to touch young girls and almost undressed them with his eyes. The Santos mother and daughter looked at each other understandingly. They definitely wouldn't have celebrated their daughter's wedding here if it wasn't for Mr. Santos' friendship with the powerful businessman Antonio Jimenez, the owner of this restaurant. But Antonio Jimenez suggested they do everything in this restaurant, and he assured them that everything would be done to the highest standard. Besides, this restaurant has become famous lately. The Gran Leroux has hosted many celebrities over the past year, from movie stars and pop singers to important politicians. So, celebrating a wedding in such a restaurant was prestigious, and this fact was crucial for Susana Santos and her daughter. Sancha, did you wash all the dishes properly? The waitress Maria ran into the kitchen and asked. Yes, why? The girl who was responsible for the cleanliness of the cutlery responded calmly. This mad bitch will come to inspect our kitchen now, Maria announced, tying up her hair. God forbid something happens to her daughter. Maybe she'll get poisoned by something, or just get sick, and they'll say it's because the dishes weren't clean enough. Sancha smiled meekly. She had only been working here for a year, and her only job was to make sure the dishes were clean so there wasn't a single smudge or fingerprint. The job was simple, but they paid her enough to afford a modest living. Don't worry. I've cleared all the plates 3 times, just in case, Sancha nodded at her. Let her check it if she wants. We have no secrets here. Poletto. Carlos, the restaurant manager, entered the kitchen. Are you still here? Get out of here. Now very important people will come here. I don't want them to see a dishwasher in a uniform. Go to the utility room. The manager glared angrily at the girl, which made her shrink back. Whatever you say, she said, and, taking off her gloves, headed for the staff room. Sancha happily sat down on the small sofa and breathed a sigh of relief. The job of a dishwasher seemed simple, but in fact, it was very difficult and exhausting, not to mention the fact that by the end of the shift her hands were falling off from the endless repetitive movements. But even despite all the hard physical labor, the girl was happy that she got a job there. After all, it was extremely difficult to get even the most low-level position in a place of such a level as Gran Leroux. Sancha Poletto was a simple girl who grew up in an orphanage, and her favorite caretaker, T. Ortiz, helped her to get a job there. After Sancha graduated, and she was 19 at the time, T. Ortiz gave her the address of an old acquaintance who used to work as a chef in this very restaurant. Ask Ion Nieto to talk to the owner, her teacher instructed her. But tell him I referred you to him. I'll call him and warn him. But he's an old man, he may forget. He used to be an excellent cook, and he started in our orphanage kitchen. However, he didn't work for us for long, only 5 years. But we were friends and always communicated. Now Ion Nieto is already retired, but he worked at this restaurant until the last day. He even went to Paris to study. He learned from the best French chefs there, so he could keep up with the level. He's the reason the Gran Leroux became famous. Sancha did everything her caregiver told her to do. And Ion Nieto, who turned out to be a very kind and sincere person, called Manrique Nogues, the owner of the restaurant, and asked him to give the girl a job. Well, Sancha, the director said to the girl when she came to his office for an interview, "I'll tell you right away, don't expect too much. You have no work experience, you just graduated from the orphanage. The only position I can offer you is a position as a dishwasher in the kitchen. It's not too much money, but you can be sure you'll get your paycheck every month. It's enough for a modest living. Later, if you want to learn to work in the restaurant industry, we can promote you to the position of waitress, but you need to work as a dishwasher for about 2 years. So, is my offer good enough for you?" "Yes," Sancha nodded. "Thank you, Manrique Nogues. I'm happy to get any job. After all, I have to survive on my own now." "Well, that's good," Manrique replied in satisfaction. "Then come back tomorrow for your first shift. Our girls will explain everything." That's how Sancha got into the Gran Leroux. Everything would be fine, but the manager Carlos Ferrer immediately hated the girl. The man thought that she wasn't good enough for their restaurant. Moreover, when she got a job here, nobody notified him beforehand. He thought he should approve each candidate personally and refuse anyone he didn't like. But in this situation, the owner simply hired the girl without asking him. Whenever possible, Carlos tried to hurt the girl's feelings and humiliate her. However, he had no power to cut her salary. Sancha was paid half as much as any of the waitresses here. Therefore, deductions from her salary through unjustified fines could attract unnecessary attention from the director, but Carlos didn't want it. He had something to hide from his boss. At the same time, the girl performed most of her duties perfectly. Since the dismissal of the previous dishwasher, they had never received any complaints about the cleanliness of the dishes. But that didn't stop Carlos Ferrer from regularly attacking Sancha. He didn't like the fact that she always behaved with dignity and restraint. She didn't smile or fawn like some waitresses who wanted an extra bonus. Too much foam, Poletto. He grimaced every time he came into the kitchen. "You've used 3 times as much dish soap again. You only need a couple of drops." "A couple of drops are not enough for so many dishes," she answered, not stopping to wash a pot. "Pots are very greasy after fondue and broths. It's very hard to clean them." The manager, not knowing what else to say at such moments, because Sancha was right, only hissed, threatening the girl with his fist. "Look, orphanage brat, if you keep wasting too much dish soap, I'll deduct it from your paycheck later. And I'll check to be sure you're not stealing cleaning supplies." "I don't need them, Mr. Manager," the girl answered him, but she was very hurt by those words. "I use the cheapest ones at home, you can come and check. And I don't eat so much that I have to soak half of the dishes in boiling water." Carlos just smirked satisfied. Even though he didn't find any evident faults in Sancha's work, he succeeded in ruining the young dishwasher's mood. Sancha endured, kept silent, and later cried on the way home when no one saw her. Even though she looked calm at work, it didn't mean that she wasn't offended by insults and bullying. The girl learned to hide her feelings, always reminding herself that it was just a job that provided her with food and clothing. Fortunately, Sancha had a place to live. The state provided her with a tiny studio apartment in an old building on the outskirts of the city. There she could relax after a hard day and distract herself from everyday worries by immersing herself in another interesting book. Sancha loved to read. Sancha had lived in the orphanage since she was a baby. Her caretaker loved to tell her the story of how she found her on the doorstep of the orphanage. "I was on a shift with Nora that day. Everyone else went home. It was summer, and a lot of people were on vacation, T. Ortiz told her. It was dark outside, about 1 a.m. And suddenly I heard someone knocking on the main gate, loudly. I immediately headed to the gate. I thought that someone needed help. There's only our orphanage nearby and no other buildings. I opened the door and saw a small basket, similar to those in which they sell berries at the market. I looked in the basket and found you. Tiny, little baby, wrapped in a pink shirt. And on your head, you had an unusual wreath, as if made of wildflowers. But the weave between the flowers was unusual. Knots were wound in a special way. It was made in the manner of Slavic knots of happiness. Nora and I studied that wreath for a long time. We wanted to learn this complicated knotting technique. That tiny wreath made of dried wildflowers was still in one of the books in her small home library. T. Ortiz and her colleague had saved it and gave it to Sancha when the girl was graduating from the orphanage. They said it should stay with her as a memory of her parents. Sometimes the girl would carefully take the wreath in her hands and look at it for a long time, trying to picture who her parents were and what made them give their daughter to the orphanage. We named you Sancha Poletto that very night, her favorite caretaker proudly told her. You can say that this wreath gave you your name. Sancha is a strong name. It means winner. It will help you to get everything you want in life. Every time Sancha thought about it, she could not hold back a warm smile. T. Ortiz had helped her a lot, and she would be grateful to her for it for the rest of her life. Finally, the day came when the young Santos Nunez couple celebrated their wedding at the Gran Leroux restaurant. The celebration was really bright and incredibly beautiful. The bride's mother still made sure that everything in the restaurant was arranged the way she wanted. Everything around was decorated with fresh flowers and dozens of balloons. A huge wedding cake of 5 tiers was proudly standing in the middle of the restaurant kitchen and was waiting for its finest hour when it would be pompously presented to the newlyweds. Sancha was quietly looking at everything going on from the kitchen, while no one saw her. Mostly everyone was busy with their usual work, serving about 100 guests who somehow managed to fit into the 2 rooms of the luxurious restaurant. Waiters were rushing back and forth, offering the guests champagne and appetizers. The famous TV host entertained the guests and never stopped talking for a minute, making silly jokes and organizing ridiculous contests for the guests. Sancha looked at the young people with admiration. The groom was magnificent. He was wearing a stylish, black tuxedo made of some expensive fabric. Sofía looked brilliant in a long, tight-fitting dress. Her dress was elegant, simple, but it looked very expensive. It wasn't like those puffy wedding dresses, looking more like a cake, that ordinary girls usually wore. Sofía's outfit sparkled in the exquisite lighting of the restaurant, emphasizing all the advantages of her body. The beauty's hair was neatly styled and decorated with pearls and Swarovski crystals. She looked like a queen. Sancha sighed bitterly. She envied Sofía. She wished she could wear the same beautiful dress and celebrate the holiday of love in the company of friends and relatives, when all the attention is focused only on you, and your beloved loves you and wants only one thing, that both of you were eternally happy. However, the girl realized that she wasn't going to have a dress or a fiancé anytime soon. The last guy she dated had broken her heart in the worst possible way, and Sancha was no longer sure if she wanted to try a serious relationship ever again. When she and Nicolau had first met, he had made the most positive impression on Sancha. The guy worked in an IT company. He was smart, cheerful, and handsome. That blue-eyed brunette easily charmed the shy dishwasher. Sancha was already 20, and she thought about trying to create a family where husband and wife, and then their children, would love and respect each other. The girl wanted simple happiness. She wanted to be a good wife to a reliable man, and Nicolau seemed to be an excellent candidate for that. Sancha quickly fell in love with Nicolau. And at first, the relationship between them was like a fairy tale. They talked a lot, went to the movies together, or spent time at camping sites, where they could fish together and play guitar for each other for hours to the accompaniment of a crackling fire. But then the fairy tale ended. Nicolao's mother, Beatrice, came back from a nearby city to look at her son's future fiancé. Endless insults and rebukes began. "Look at your girlfriend, son," Beatrice sighed, exaggeratedly tragic. She has no taste, no style. She dresses like a beggar. That's not the kind of fiancé I dreamed of for you, Nicolau. My fiancé is an empathic, loving girl, Nicolau spoke up for Sancha. Lack of money doesn't make her a bad person. This is true for people who grew up in well-to-do families, but not for an orphan who works as a dishwasher. Do you think she's interested in you, or just in the opportunity to have a better life with a smart guy from a good family? And she smiled evilly, looking at the girl. Sancha, who didn't even know what to say to such a blatant mockery of her origins, almost cried. However, Beatrice did not let her do that either. Don't you dare cry, she hissed venomously and threw her handkerchief on the girl's lap. Here, wipe your face. And stop playing that cheap performance in front of me. I suppose now you're going to tell me you're pregnant? I'm not pregnant, Sancha said, sobbing. But I really, really love your son. I don't care if he has money or not. I just want to be with him. Always. And I just want to find a decent wife for my son. That's it, Nicolao's mother said with a nasty smile. Believe me, Sancha, I have no claims against you. Even dishwashers can get married successfully, but they marry their equals. So don't dream of marrying my son. That day Sancha left her fiancé's apartment as if they had spit in her face. She had never experienced such humiliation even in the orphanage. Nicolau tried to catch up with the girl and apologize for his mother's terrible behavior, but Sancha asked to leave her alone. Reluctantly, Nicolau let the girl go. But after that incident, he became somehow cold toward her. The young dishwasher realized that apparently Beatrice succeeded in guiding her son to the right path. He almost stopped calling, did not text her in messengers and social media, and then disappeared from the radar. Sancha was disappointed when after a couple of months she saw a picture of him with a new girlfriend on his social media profile. Nicolao's new girlfriend was clearly from a wealthy family, and Sancha could only envy her clothes and good-looking shiny hair. But Isolde looked fake, somewhat artificial with her perfect body shape, unnaturally large breasts, and bright red lips. But the most important thing was that now Nicolao's mother was absolutely satisfied with everything. Sancha checked out the beauty's profile to see what she did for a living. It turned out that Isolde was a model. Judging by the numerous photos where she posed wearing expensive swimsuits from famous brands, the beauty advertised only luxury lingerie. The funny thing is that her father was a famous industrial tycoon. So it was clear that the image of the model was just a cover for the promiscuous lifestyle of the so-called socialite. Sancha was insanely hurt. She turned off her old laptop and bit her lip to keep from crying. Is this what Nicolau had traded her for? Is he really so afraid of his mother? Or did he just expect to get a job in Isolde's father's huge corporation and decided to ignore her obvious vulgarity and frivolity? Or maybe he doesn't want to work ever again, but live off Isolde's father. Sancha would never know the answers to these questions, but her heart was completely broken. It turns out that with me he was just having fun, the girl thought, and he's ready to get married to this bimbo right away because it's beneficial to him and his mom. But what Isolde found in a guy like Nicolau? Nicolau once told Sancha that he and his mother are descendants of a famous architect. Well, I wish you happiness, my love, Sancha said and turned that page of her life over. She tried not to think about Nicolau anymore. But today, when she looked at the laughing Sofia and her handsome fiancé, tears involuntarily came to her throat. She turned away and hurried to immerse herself in a lot of foam and dirty porcelain. After a while, Sancha went outside through the back door and found herself in the backyard of the restaurant, where she often fed the local stray dogs with leftovers from the kitchen. The girl always loved animals and tried to do something to help them whenever she could. Sometimes she'd even buy food and take it to the local shelter. Two large dogs, who were already waiting for their two-legged friend, immediately ran up to the girl and began to stand on their hind legs, putting their warm heads and wet noses under her hand. They asked for food that way. The dogs were very smart and never wandered near the restaurant for nothing. They knew the time when the dishwasher would come out and bring them delicious pieces of meat and other food. That's why they came to the back door only in the evening. Eat, you're welcome, Sancha was saying, pulling out treats from the bag. A few dozen meters away, Sofía was playing catch the bride's bouquet with her friends. Blushing from wine and fun, the girl climbed a few high steps leading to the beautiful photo zone, then turned her back to the other girls and prepared to throw the bouquet to them. Girls, are you ready? Sofía shouted to them, laughing. Sancha shook off the crumbs and dog hair and slowly walked closer to the laughing girls. She was curious to see which one of them would catch the lucky bouquet. Yes, the crowd of girls in the same cocktail dresses of light lilac colors shouted. Sofía turned to her friends again and winked at them. Are you sure you're ready? Keep in mind, I'm only going to throw it once. Sofía, come on, do it. One of them shouted, and they all burst into laughter together. Sancha leaned against the stone wall of the building, watching the rich young people having fun. At that moment, she regretted that she never found any real friends at the orphanage. Even if she ever had a wedding, she would have no one to invite to it. Because Sancha had no friends at all. Just a couple of acquaintances from the orphanage, but they probably already moved to other cities. All right. Okay, I'm throwing the bouquet on 1, 2, 3. 1, the bride said playfully. 2, get ready girls, get ready. Sofía froze for a moment, and then her arms flapped sharply upward like the wings of a bird. 3. Sancha breathlessly watched as the beautiful, delicate purple bouquet of roses tied with silk ribbon flew higher and higher into the air, and then made a wide circle over all the bridesmaids and flew straight into her hands. Oh! Sancha shrieked, picking up the bride's bouquet. She hadn't meant to catch it at all, but that's how it happened. Lowering her eyes to the delicate pink flower buds, Sancha felt the air in her lungs suddenly run out. The girl literally forgot how to breathe for a second. A nervous shiver ran through Sancha's body. Only now she noticed that the bouquet contained not only roses, but also a composition of various flowers. All of these flowers were tied together with a mix of their own stems and meadow grass, which formed perfectly even squares, commonly known as knots of happiness. Not only that, but Sancha realized that she had seen the same composition in her own newborn wreath that she kept at home in a book. Could it be just a coincidence? The girl wasn't sure of that. Oh, my goodness, girls, look at this. One of the bride's friends shouted. Looks like we're not going to get married this year. The dishwasher will be ahead of us anyway. The girl laughed, but there was something unkind, sarcastic in her laughter. I'm sorry, I caught it by accident. I didn't mean to, Sancha said, blushing to the roots of her hair. She wanted to return the bouquet to the bride for another attempt. But Sofía refused. No. If you caught it, you can have it. Especially since I made this bouquet myself. I can make another one, no problem. The ground beneath Sancha's feet shook. What do you mean, you made it? How is that possible? I'm sorry, are you okay? Sofía asked her, gently taking Sancha under her elbow. It turned out that the girl hadn't even noticed that she almost fainted right in the middle of the happy crowd. Why don't we step aside? Should I help you to get to the kitchen? The bride asked. No, I'm fine. Thank you, the girl thanked, knowing perfectly well what shame awaits her if she dares to talk to the rich bride sincerely. Carlos Ferrer had already threatened her, damn, immediately go to the kitchen. You look disgusting in your uniform. If the guests see you, you will ruin their party. Sancha apologized to Santos again and hurried into the staff room, where she immediately splashed cold water on her face. She still had the bouquet, and now she could get a closer look at it. The guests were busy with dessert, and the new batch of dishes would be in the kitchen no sooner than a quarter of an hour. Sancha examined the square knots once again, and each one of them seemed to have something else hidden in it. A very sophisticated pattern. There was no doubt about it. It was exactly the way her own wreath had been made. Ives, she asked the chef cautiously. Who are these Santos? I mean, I realize they're very rich people, but what exactly do they do? Ives, who was filling the tartlets with red caviar, only snorted and raised an eyebrow incredulously. "Don't you read the news at all?" "Please, I really need to know," Sancha asked him. "Let's keep your sarcasm until next time." "Okay," said the chef and deftly decorated each tartlet with fresh parsley. Santos, they're kind of giants in the media industry. Their father owns a stake in a major telecommunications network, and his wife controls all the local art galleries and modern art museums. "Wow," Sancha exhaled in admiration. "Yeah. Their daughter has a chain of beauty salons in several cities. The head office and the biggest salon are here, and the smaller ones are in other cities. And her fiancé is the son of the co-owner of one of the country's largest banks. In short, it's almost a royal family." "Yeah," the girl sighed and, thanking the chef for the information, returned to her routine. In the evening, when all the guests had left, Sancha got another reprimand from the manager. "How dare you go outside, knowing that our guests will be there at that time?" Carlos Ferrer yelled at her. "I didn't know," Sancha tried to justify herself. "I just went out to get some fresh air, to feed the dogs. And they were throwing a bouquet. So the bouquet landed on me. It wasn't on purpose, I swear." "I don't care about your explanations, you idiot." The manager was furious. "You almost ruined the bride's day. What if she had tried to help you? What if she'd been distracted from her community by some worm like you? Do you have any idea who Santos and Nunez are, what their status is? You're lucky the paparazzi didn't capture the bride in your company." Carlos Ferrer told something else to Sancha, but the girl wasn't listening. She silently swallowed her tears and cursed her fate, because of which she was forced to wash dishes for other people, even though they were very, very rich. When the girl came back home, she thought about the mysterious bouquet again. The bouquet was in her room now in a glass vase, delighting her with its freshness and unusual beauty. "What if I am somehow connected with the Santos family?" the girl involuntarily dreamed. Maybe the person who taught Sofia how to weave such knots is the same person who wove Sancha's wreath and abandoned her years ago. Sancha imagined what her life might have been like if she had been a distant relative of this wealthy family. She could graduate from any university and maybe even start her own business. "Oh, Poletto, stop dreaming," she said to herself. "It's time to go to bed because tomorrow you'll go to wash the dishes again." The girl fell asleep almost immediately. In her dreams, she saw a luxurious wedding dress, crystals in her hair, and that unfortunate bride's bouquet. The knots of the bouquet were growing, trying to entangle Sancha with its stems, and then sharply shrinking, pushing the girl away. It took Sancha a long time to pull herself together, but eventually, she decided to take a risk and go to Sofia's office. She found the address of her beauty salon on the internet. When she arrived, she stood for a few minutes in front of the beautiful glass door, hesitating to go inside. Finally, when she crossed the threshold, several pairs of surprised women's eyes looked at her. The appearance of both the masters in the salon and their clients almost screamed about how much money they had. Sancha immediately felt uncomfortable in her simple light gray cardigan and jeans bought at last year's sale. "Miss, do you need anything?" one of the masters asked while painting the nail of a wealthy middle-aged lady who had a gold necklace with some precious stones around her neck. "There's a cheaper salon on the next street," another girl said, fluttering her long false eyelashes. "You'll recognize it at once. It's so expensive, it's like a haircutting salon 3 houses away. You'll recognize it right away. There's a big yellow sign so that the economy class can see it right away, from afar." Sancha didn't need to know the slang of the rich to realize that they were making fun of her. The girls made Sancha feel more and more ashamed of how she looked compared to them. "If you want to know our prices, I can show you the price list right away," the first manicurist said. "Your salary is only enough to paint one finger, and only with colorless nail polish. Everything else is very expensive." Sancha felt like crying and was about to leave when a luxurious sports car of ripe cherry color drove up to the salon. Sancha didn't know much about it, but it seemed to her that it was a very expensive car. A second later, Santos Jr. got out of the car. The young girl entered her salon and the manicurists immediately fell silent. "What's going on here?" she asked sternly. "Are you chatting about some nonsense during working hours again?" Sancha sincerely admired Sofia. She was the same age as Sancha, only 20. But nevertheless, she was a real businesswoman, while Sancha was deprived of even the opportunity to get a more or less decent education. She felt sad for a second, but then she remembered what parents Sofia had. They probably simply bought all those salons for their daughter, and in general, gave her a good start in life. However, this didn't prevent the rich heiress from behaving with dignity. "Wait, I know you," she said to Sancha, who was trembling with embarrassment. "Are you the girl who caught my bouquet? Your name is Sancha, right?" "Yes," the dishwasher said, stammering. "I'm sorry for coming here, but I really need to ask you something. So why are we standing here? Let's go to my office, we'll talk there." Sancha nodded and followed Sofia under the indignant glances of the manicurists and hairdressers. "So, what did you want to know, Sancha?" the girl asked again, dropping into her huge leather chair. "Is it okay that I'm calling you Sancha? You and I are already kind of girlfriends," Sofia smiled, and Sancha agreed. The guest hesitated for a moment before asking her main question. "I wanted to know about that bouquet. Where did you, you? Who taught you to weave such interesting floral compositions? The wildflower garland you made was really good. Did your parents teach you that?" The owner of the salon was very surprised by such an extraordinary question, but still answered, "Not exactly. My governess used to weave flowers like that. Her name was Natalia." The girl's face lit up as she remembered this woman. "That's where I learned about this technique and about the flowers that could be used to weave these knots so perfectly. It seemed very interesting to me. I love unusual things." Sancha smiled and looked hopefully at the rich beauty. "Sofia, do you know where the governess is now? Maybe she's working for someone else in the city?" Santos wrinkled her perfectly smooth forehead and then shook her head negatively. "I don't know where she's working now. I haven't seen her in a long time, but I have her home address. I've been wanting to visit her for a long time, but I haven't had time. Business, you know." Sofia waved her hands and granted Sancha another of her countless smiles. Only this time it was a sympathetic one. "I can go to her instead of you," Sancha suggested enthusiastically, "and I'll give her your wishes and gifts if you want to do something nice for your former governess." "That's a good idea," Sofia agreed and gave Sancha Natalia's address. "Wait, I'll be right back." Sofia returned a few minutes later, carrying 2 huge bags of beauty care products and fruit. "Here. If you can give this to her, I'll be very grateful. There are vitamins, skincare products, and good shampoos." Sancha didn't dare to tell the rich girl that a retired woman might need groceries and some warm clothes more than all this beauty stuff. The girl saw that Sofia spoke of her governess with warmth and even love, so she didn't want to disappoint her. After all, it was not her fault that she had no idea how ordinary people really lived. And as Sancha's gut told her, Natalia was one of the ordinary people. When she arrived at the right address, Sancha had a faint hope that she would be able to talk to Natalia and perhaps find out the secret of her origin. However, she was very disappointed. The woman was not at home. Sancha rang the bell and knocked on the door for a long time, and then Natalia's elderly neighbor came out of the next apartment. "Are you here to see Natalia, young lady? She was taken to the hospital 3 days ago." Sancha slowly put the large bags on the floor. "To the hospital?" she asked in a quiet voice. "What happened?" "I don't know exactly," the neighbor shrugged her shoulders. "I think the doctors said she had cancer. And then, apparently, her condition worsened, so they took her to the hospital." "Oh my gosh," Sancha could only whisper, and then asked the elderly woman for the address of the hospital where Natalia was now. The neighbor asked if Sancha was her relative, and she confidently lied that she was her niece, who had come to visit her from another city. When Sancha arrived at the hospital, she got another blow. This time from the doctors. "Natalia Ramos?" The doctor asked her. "I'm afraid you're too late, young lady. Natalia fell into a coma tonight, and we have no guarantee that she will come out of it anytime soon. There's not even the smallest chance she'll recover?" Sancha asked the doctor, almost crying. "Who knows?" the man said. "There are different miracles in life. Maybe she'll come to her senses, maybe not. Are you her relative?" Sancha didn't answer anything. She slowly sat down on a chair. She wanted to tear her hair out of her head in despair. The only thread that could lead to her past was cut off so absurdly. And was this thread leading anywhere at all? Or was it all just a hopeless fantasy of the unfortunate Sancha, who dreamed of finding her blood relatives? "Let me give you a sedative shot," the doctor standing nearby suggested. He noticed that the girl was feeling unwell. "You're very nervous, she must mean a lot to you." "I'll get some rest, and everything will be fine," she said. Sancha had to think about what to do next, whether she should wait for Natalia to wake up or whether it was better to go back to her normal life and forget about this whole situation. Sancha made a difficult decision and began to visit Natalia from time to time, trying to read her a book or just talk to her. Sancha wanted to believe that wherever this poor woman was, she would still be able to hear the voice of the young dishwasher and know that she was not alone in the world and that she had a place to go back to. The girl could not abandon the lonely woman because, apparently, she had no relatives or friends. Sancha was the only person who was interested in her condition. And Natalia had already become like a relative to the orphan girl. She talked to her with pleasure and gave her a light hand massage to awaken her nerve endings, hoping faintly that it would help the governess to wake up. However, after 2 months, when Natalia's condition still did not show any significant improvement, the doctors made a difficult decision to disconnect the patient from the ventilator. "No, you can't do that." Sancha protested when the doctor told her the sad news. "I won't let you do it. I'm sure Natalia will come back to us." Sancha wanted to cry, but she realized that in this situation there was not much she could do. "Miss, you have to understand. We took care of her for a very long time, as long as government funds allowed. Even more, the doctor tried to explain, in fact, we should have done it a month ago when it became clear that the patient would not come out of the coma. However, seeing your concern and attempts to bring her back to life, we prolonged her existence for a while longer. But we can no longer afford to spend so much money on her and keep her in a separate intensive care unit. I'm afraid you should say goodbye to your relative and let her go." Sancha shook her head stubbornly, barely holding back the flood of tears that choked her at that moment. "Wait. No, I can't. Look, if I can find the money to keep Natalia alive, to keep the machine connected to her, will that help?" The doctor put his hands in his pockets and glared at the poorly dressed girl. Private funding could make a big difference. But the doctor hesitated, not knowing how to say it more politely. "I'm afraid we both realize that you don't have so much money. It's expensive, Sancha. It's very expensive. I apologize for my bluntness." Sancha wiped her face with the sleeve of her old sweatshirt and then said firmly, "You're right, doctor, I don't have that kind of money. But I know someone who could help. Please keep Natalia alive for at least another week. I beg you, I will find the money and everything will be fine. I swear." The doctor was sympathetic to the girl's speech. He was impressed by her genuine concern for the condition of a woman who was almost a stranger to her. In fact, the doctor had long known that Sancha and Ramos were not related. "Well, all right. I'll give you 4 days. I can't give more, it's a big risk for me," the doctor said and checked his pocket calendar, which he always had with him. "If you can find sponsors and money, I can get permission to keep monitoring her condition. But only 4 days, I can't give you more, I'm sorry." "Thank you, doctor." Sancha jumped up and hugged the tall, elderly doctor, who was embarrassed and didn't even know how to react. "Don't waste time," he gently pulled the girl away. Every minute is precious to you now. Yes, you're right, Sancha nodded and ran out of the hospital, dialing Sofia's number. Hello, Sofia. The girl shouted into the receiver. Sofia, can I come to your office right now? I beg you, I need to talk to you right now. It's a matter of life and death. Sofia agreed to talk to Sancha, and in just an hour the young dishwasher was describing to the rich heiress the severity of her former governess's condition. Sofia, you are our only hope now, Sancha told her. Please help us pay for Natalia's further treatment. She has been a good governess for you, almost like your grandmother, only better. Remember, you told me that she taught you how to cook and how to weave flower knots. Don't leave her in trouble, I beg you, Sofia. She has been through a lot, and now she is all alone, with no one to help her but you and me. Sofia tapped her perfectly manicured finger on the oak desk in her office, then looked at Sancha seriously and frowned. There's one thing I don't understand, Sancha. The girl was silent for a moment. And at that moment Sancha was afraid that her rich friend would reject her now and kick her out of her office. Why didn't you tell me before? You visited my governess and looked after her all this time. And you didn't tell me. I didn't expect this from you. I don't understand why you didn't tell me. I thought we were friends. The young dishwasher blushed with embarrassment. She had no idea that Sofia would be offended by such a thing. I'm sorry, Sancha said quietly, I just didn't want to bother you. I can see how busy you are all the time, and you have a family, a husband. I don't think you have time to take care of her. And I live alone, and there's nothing else in my life but work. And I became attached to Natalia. I thought no one in this world needed her. And, apparently, you thought I didn't need her either? Sofia raised her eyebrows. Well, we'll talk about it later, but now we have to save my favorite governess. The guest's face brightened through her tears. Thank you, Sofia, thank you. You are the best person in this world. Sancha wiped away her tears, and Sofia began to make phone calls and involve all the connections she had. Finally, when everything was arranged and the bank promised to transfer the payment to the hospital within 24 hours, Sofia looked at Sancha and said seriously, Not all rich people are villains. I just want you to know that. In general, a person's nature does not depend on money. If someone is good at heart, money won't spoil them. Do you think my dad bought this business for me so I can have fun? Partly for that too, but not only that. My father taught me from childhood that money must work. Our family has always valued any kind of labor, both intellectual and physical. My mom is a little nervous, but she's very good and kind-hearted. And she is very talented. She sees potential masterpieces where others can see only garbage. Can you imagine? And my father, he spent my whole childhood on business trips and in meetings so that we could have it all. I didn't know, Sancha whispered. I'm not reproaching you, the rich heiress smiled at her. I'm just trying to tell you that if a person is smart and hardworking, they can get rich and still be a good person. You can achieve everything if you believe in yourself and work hard, you know? Sancha nodded, crying tears of joy and gratitude to Sofia for possibly saving the governess's life. Let's go to her now. I want to see Natalia, the businesswoman said firmly. Maybe she will hear me. The girls began to visit the woman regularly, but she was still in a coma. But at least now they were not afraid that the doctors would turn off the ventilator. Sofia negotiated with the doctors that they would treat and monitor the condition of the patient as long as needed, and she would support them financially. A few months later, a miracle happened. One beautiful autumn day, when the birds were singing outside the window and colorful leaves were swirling in the air, Natalia finally woke up. Sancha, who was at her bedside at that moment, was overjoyed. Where am I? The woman said slowly, trying to look around. You are in the hospital, Sancha told her softly and gently took her hand. How are you feeling? I'll get the doctor right away. Thank you. Excuse me, who are you? Natalia looked at Sancha so intently that Sancha felt a shudder inside. But she didn't understand why she felt so nervous all of a sudden. I'm Sancha. Wait until the doctor sees you, and then I will tell you everything. After a while, when Natalia was getting better and receiving all the care she needed, Sancha and Sofia decided to visit her together. Sancha took the flower wreath and showed it to Sofia's governess, asking about a rare weave. The woman silently stared at the flower wreath for the first couple of minutes, then she looked at Sancha and slowly shifted her gaze to Sofia. Natalia turned pale, and Sofia got worried, but finally, the woman whispered to them, "Oh, my God. Girls." Then she told a story that was hard to believe. They certainly didn't expect such frankness from someone who had spent most of her life raising other people's children. "I was young then. I was not even 40, Natalia began. I worked as a teacher in one of the local schools. I was young, beautiful, and ambitious. I thought at the time that one day I would be on top of the world and everyone would know about Natalia Ramos, Teacher of the Year. Yes, I really wanted to get this award then." The governess's eyes lit up with a special fire, the fire of former excitement and desire to make a career. "Salud was the father of one of my students," the woman continued. "He was a tall, handsome man. He started courting me right away. He moved to us from some northern city, so I didn't know if he had a woman there. But when our affair became more serious, I found out he was married. His wife came and made such a scandal at school that I thought I'd never get that dirt off of me." Natalia's eyes were sad, but both girls were intrigued. The woman rubbed her hands as if she were cold, and then continued. "Salud broke up with me. He couldn't get out from under the influence of his domineering wife. It turned out they played this game regularly. She would leave him for a couple of months, then he would leave her. They cheated on each other regularly, but always came back to each other. She was stronger than he was. And Salud, he always liked to obey, he just tried not to show it." She sighed deeply and told them what happened next. "Meanwhile, I found out that I was 8 weeks pregnant." Natalia cried. The ultrasound showed twins, 2 girls. I was very depressed. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. I was an orphan. My parents had died by that time, and I had no other relatives, no one to help me. I thought, where would I go alone with 2 children? They fired me from the school anyway. I was fired for immoral behavior, and they told me I couldn't sleep with or get pregnant by the fathers of our students. Everyone knew about this situation, teachers, students, and their parents. A bitter grin appeared on Natalia's lips. Sancha thought that Natalia had been very beautiful when she was young. And one day, when I was in the hospital, some rich people came to me. They were a childless couple who were informed about my miserable situation. It turned out that they knew the gynecologist. As I found out later, this doctor was looking for girls like me, that is, those who were in a difficult life situation, and told about them to rich people who could not have children. The girls listened silently. They were shocked by the things the former governess was telling them. The couple offered to give them one of my future daughters. It was almost like surrogacy, only there were no tests, and everything was in secret. They promised me a lot of money. I agreed because I had no other choice at that time. And what happened next? Did you really give them your daughter? Sofia could not believe her ears. Natalia cried and nodded. Yes, I gave them one of my daughters, but it didn't help me at all. The labor was very difficult, and I was tormented by guilt all the time. I didn't understand why my happy and successful life was shattered in an instant. My career was ruined. I didn't have a husband, but I was pregnant. At the time, it was considered a disgrace. And I started to feel uncontrollable anger towards my second daughter. I thought that she was to blame for everything, that I could not go back to school, and now I could not build a normal life either. Because who needs a 30-year-old unemployed woman with a baby? Every day my little girl cried more and more, and I got more and more angry. At first, I just refused to feed her. I didn't want to. And then I lost my milk. And then I did something irreparable. Nowadays they'd say I had postpartum depression. One day, I wrapped my daughter in a thin blanket, made a wreath for her, as my grandmother once taught me, and took my daughter to the threshold of the orphanage. The girls looked at each other dumbfounded. Was the answer so close? And Natalia, as if not noticing their reactions, continued. She had kept this stone in her soul for many years, and now she desperately needed to throw it off. God only knows how much I regretted it at the time. Later I tried to take her out of the orphanage, but I couldn't. They wouldn't let me. I even started drinking because of that, but I came to my senses in time. For a while, I lived on the money the rich people left me. And then I found the parents of my first girl and asked them to hire me as a governess. Just to see how my baby grows in another family, and to be able to communicate at least in this way, at least as a governess. It's a terrible pain to see your child calling a stranger woman a mom. But it was punishment for my sin, for my stupidity and rage toward my children. Only then Natalia raised her tear-red eyes to the girls. Sofía Santos, I realize you can never forgive me. But I hope that you will try to understand me someday. To understand that sometimes we have no control over our thoughts and feelings. And ambition can completely block us from a clear view of the most precious thing we have in this life. Forgive me, girls, forgive me. Natalia covered her face with her hands, and the shocked Santos and Sofía looked at each other again. What does it mean, Santos? That we are sisters? Sofía asked in confusion. We are sisters, Santos nodded in response. We are sisters, Sofía. Santos turned to Natalia and hugged her tightly. Mommy. It's so good to see you awake. I can't believe I finally found you. Don't worry. I forgave you a long time ago. As soon as I saw you lying here all alone in the room, I forgave you. Probably on some subconscious level, I felt you were my family. Santos, my baby, Natalia hugged her daughter in response. Thank you for accepting me. But I am ashamed for hiding it for so many years. Sofía, who was confused until that moment, now gently took her mother's hand and said warmly, Thank you for telling me, Natalia. I'm sorry, I probably can't call you Mom because Susana raised me. You know. But I'm glad you're back in my life. That means I have 2 moms now. Isn't that a miracle? Tears glistened on Sofía's face, and she also embraced her elderly governess. It was only now that Sofía and Santos noticed that they looked similar. They grew up in different conditions, lived different lives, ate different food, worked different jobs, faced different problems, and were completely different. And yet, their faces were similar. Natalia reconciled with her children and was getting better. Gradually she got back on her feet, and Sofía insisted that Natalia move into her and her husband's new home. Sofía's parents didn't hide the truth from her. She is already an adult, married. So they took Natalia's return to their lives calmly. Besides, she had worked for them and lived in their house for so many years that she was considered a family member. And the fact that her daughter calls rich people her parents, it is a peculiarity of circumstances, nothing more. The main thing was that all of them, both Santos couple and Natalia, loved Sofía madly, so they were all one big and friendly family. Santos has officially become the new manager of one of her sister's beauty salons. The girl took a 6-month course at one of the capital's colleges and now confidently leads a small team of 20 people. Santos changed the policy of the luxury place, so now anyone could afford to get a manicure and hairstyle here for a reasonable price. And now no one dared to be rude or mock the clients, because the client is first and foremost a guest and a friend. Santos' personal life also began to get better. She started dating Ives, that sarcastic but kind young man who works as a chef at the Gran Leroux restaurant. They are happy together and are already planning to get married. Sofía, who is expecting her first child, is teasing her sister about when it will finally be her turn to be a young and supermodern mom. After all, she caught her bouquet. Natalia helps and supports her daughters in everything. She still wants to atone for the mistakes of her past, but both daughters have forgiven her long ago and now only ask her to live peacefully and enjoy every day spent with them together. The woman cries in response, and each time says that she has never been so happy before.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe.